Hello, kia ora, g'day, I'm Philip Duncan from Weather Watch TV on YouTube with your Australia-only forecast right through until Sunday, recorded on Monday, the 29th of September. Well, let's have a look at the satellite map this morning, and certainly a lot of energy around South Australia. Thunderstorms, showers, bit of rain in there as well, as all of that is moving eastwards towards Victoria, Bass Strait, Tasmania, thanks to low pressure spinning over the Great Australian Bight. Elsewhere, there is not really a lot to talk about. We do have a few isolated showers and thunderstorms around the Northern Territory, Queensland and Western Australia, although fairly dry, and mostly dry around New South Wales. Again, a couple of showers, some high cloud coming through there with the westerly flow, and a low pressure zone that's formed in the Coral Sea, dragging that rain and thundery weather away from Queensland and heading off more towards New Caledonia. So let's have a look at the air pressure map at the moment. You can see this low. Notice how it's kind of separated off from most of the low pressure down around Antarctica. This small ridge of high pressure sort of coming in and cutting it free. But that system is still going to be moving eastwards over the next couple of days. Ahead of it, windy, warm nor'westers. Behind it, a much colder south to southwesterly change. High pressure is still sitting over the Indian Ocean area, and there is that weak low in the Coral Sea. The rest of the high pressure out in the Tasman, heading off towards New Zealand. So speaking of the air pressure, let's talk about the sudden stratospheric warming. You might have been hearing about the SSW. I see that the ABC and the Guardian have done stories on it. So I'll try and just give you a very simplistic breakdown of what it means. So we talk about the polar boundary all the time, known as the polar vortex. It is a sort of a current of air high up around the atmosphere that tracks around Antarctica. And what that does is it kind of keeps all these storms and all the cold air stuck around the South Pole. So when you get one of these warming events, it breaks the sort of elasticity of that blue circle, and instead of being kind of a roughly circular shape, it starts to look a little more like this, where it looks more like a flower or a star with these bigger bursts of blue going northwards, but nearby you can have warmer air being pulled down. So it's kind of like when you lean on a hot water bed and it drops down one side and bubbles up on the other. So we end up with getting injections of warmth and other areas where the cold blows out. And this happens anywhere around Antarctica. It is not just about the New Zealand-Australia area. The entire southern hemisphere is affected by this. So how does it affect our weather? Well, at this time of the year, it's very hard to actually really notice it because spring is already chaotic, especially for those of you in the coastal south of Australia and around New Zealand. So what it means is we're going to see more spring-like weather continuing on, and it may go longer this year. Doesn't mean it's always going to be cold, doesn't mean it's always going to be unsettled, but perhaps a slightly windier next couple of months ahead. And we do see some bigger variations in the temperatures because of these colder and warmer sort of unsettled pattern going around Antarctica. So when it's more organized, usually our seasons are a bit more defined. So this might just sort of drag spring weather out for some of you. And I think for Australia, windy westerlies could be a concern. I know the Bureau of Meteorology have identified that could be an issue, but we don't have a lot of these to go by, historically speaking, to really know 100% how much it alters our weather pattern. But it's safe to say chaotic is going to be, probably the word of the day. So let's have a look, or word of the month really, it's not just a day or two. Here is Tuesday's setup. So high pressure building in the Indian Ocean, trying to stretch out, basically making it to South Australia, but from the central part of South Australia down to sort of Victoria, you're getting into that southwesterly flow. So there is that low pressure zone that's disconnected from everything south of Australia, and there's a pool of cold polar air that's also detached. That just means that when those showers and thunderstorms form, they go up into a very cold pool of air, so that increases the chance of thunderstorms and hail showers as we go through Tuesday. Warm, windy nor'westers ahead of it around the Sydney area, and we've got a windy-ish southeasterly pushing out into the midwest of Western Australia. On Wednesday, more showers around South Australia, Victoria and Tasmania. It's not necessarily pouring with rain for everybody all day. Low pressure over the top of Tasmania means your winds are easing. But look back, south of Adelaide and Kangaroo Island, you can see that wintry southwesterly starting to build, so that is on its way in. Ahead of that, apart from a couple of isolated showers, maybe a few thunderstorms around Queensland, the Northern Territory, maybe an isolated one or two around New South Wales. Most of Australia is dry. And that takes us to Thursday, where polar air returns to Victoria, to the mountains and to the ski fields. That is exactly what we're seeing right here, ballooning in with that southerly change. So again, not overly windy in places like Tasmania, but further back, going into the border of Victoria and South Australia, windy conditions there. There may be some wind gusts getting up 90 k's an hour here and there, but further northwards, not as wet, not as windy, although southerly flow does come up here into Queensland, so it won't be as hot, but that could spark a few thunderstorms that you're seeing in those rain showers popping up around Queensland and the Northern Territory here on Thursday. But the main feature certainly here in the southeast. As we go to Friday, the high drifts further eastwards, so the winds start to ease back, although the southerly is still around. It's not as cold on Friday as well, although southerly winds still mean it won't be as warm as perhaps it is at the moment before that all comes on through. Wet weather spills over into the ACT, some parts of New South Wales. Apart from a couple of isolated showers in Queensland, it's mostly dry, but we do see thunderstorms building up here around the Northern Territory, and the red tropical line starting to be dragged southwards. Northerly winds here on the back edge of the high pressure zone, so that is dragging down some warmth as we go in towards the weekend. And look at this, first time we've seen the red tropical line drop all the way down to the coastal south. We haven't seen that since going back to last summer or autumn. So now we are getting some warm, hot weather being mixed in. Jump just over a little further, there is the next polar blast coming through. So talk about spring and talk about, you know, the SSW. This is what we're likely to be seeing, these sort of injections of heat, injections of cold. I mean, that sounds like spring to me, but it's also going to perhaps bring a bit more energy into Australia's weather pattern over the next couple of months. Energy, when I say that, I mean, you know, usually a bit of wind and low pressure still coming through into the forecasts. So it's been a while, but the severe weather box comes back here on Sunday for the southwest corner. Well, it's, you know, it's quite a large area though, of southern parts of Western Australia, excuse me, get my directions right. So this is windy weather, thunderstorms, and that polar airflow, which is mostly south of you, but it just shows some instability. Jump over to South Australia, that heat being dragged further down, so you'll be feeling those warm nor'westers coming into the southeast, lifting up the temperatures after the cold weather you've just had. And in New South Wales, the most populous state, the state with the most people in it. That's what I'm trying to say. Not a lot going on. I feel disappointed that for the 2 years we've been doing these videos, New South Wales has kind of been outside much of the severe weather, so I barely talk about Sydney. But it's not because I'm choosing to do that, it's because the weather is choosing to basically avoid you. So before I go, here is the 7-day rainfall map showing what we can expect. So parts of South Australia and Victoria, rainfall numbers are anywhere between 10 or 15 millimetres in the green, up to maybe 50 or 60 into the oranges and going into the reds. Certainly you see the red here around parts of the west coast of Tasmania. Not so much further elsewhere, although where you see the blue around Queensland, the Northern Territory and the Kimberley, those areas might produce some thunderstorms that go beyond what you see. And these cold fronts and thunderstorms coming in for the southwest third of Western Australia, also worth keeping an eye on. So quite a few things going on. It is that time of the year. That's all from me. I'll see you again tomorrow Tuesday with our next Australia Only update.